Last week on the Brandmerry Podcast, I shared 3 planning mistakes that you are going to want to avoid in 2024. One of those mistakes was all around planning 12 full months in advance and how this rigid plan can actually keep you from pivoting gracefully. Today, we're going to talk about what happens when you need to adjust your plans in the middle of the year. I am all about flexible planning, probably because I spent so many years creating a very rigid plan. And it was really hard for me in the middle of the year to feel like I could change. That somehow if I needed to change or decided to call off a launch or launch a brand new product, that it felt like I was in a way kind of failing. Which, as a recovering perfectionist, is something that I really struggle with. And maybe you can also relate to that. So I started to realize that there was probably a better way to go about planning in my business. A better strategy, if you will, that would allow me to reassess. This is why last week I shared that, in my opinion, planning a full 12 months in business is actually not setting you up for the most success. Now, I got a lot of questions about this, and I got a lot of responses about this in my email inbox. And I'm not saying that I don't want you to think about where you want to be at the end of the year. What I'm saying is I don't want you to determine that next November, you are going to specifically be doing these things during that month. Because the version of you on January 1 isn't necessarily going to be the same exact version of you come November. We're all about growth here, right? So how do we set ourselves up to create a strategy that supports you in getting to your end result without feeling like it's too rigid and there is no flexibility? That's where planning fluidity comes into play. And it's something that I'm teaching inside of my program, Brand New Plan. Doors are currently open for this. And if you want to completely transform the way that you plan as a business owner and create a more fluid approach to planning, definitely check out brandmerry.com/new plan for all of the details. But I wanted to give you a little sneak peek at my pivoting strategy. And yes, pivoting is a strategy. Sometimes we think that pivoting just happens, right? Something's happening from the outside in, or something's changing internally, and suddenly we have to change course. We need to redirect what is going on, and we're just kind of doing it in that moment. You know, my friend one time called me the queen of the pivot, and it really got me thinking. I'm pretty good at pivoting, and I think it comes down to the fact that I'm not just throwing spaghetti at the wall. I'm not just saying like, this isn't working, we got to do something else, and just throwing my hands up in the air and doing whatever comes to my mind. There's a strategy behind the actual pivot. And it comes down to this 4-step process that I'm going to share with you today. Now, why is this so important? Because whether you are pivoting just randomly in like February or next August, whatever is happening in your personal life or in your business that you feel like you need to go through this process, you can use these steps that I'm going to share with you. But they are also the exact same steps that I recommend you go through every 90 days. That's because when you take this new approach to planning, while we aren't mapping out a full 12 months and every little thing you're going to do every single month and what you're going to be building and all of those different things, we are doing that in 90-day increments. And so what happens at the end of the 90 days? You need to check in with yourself. You need to see how you're feeling. How are you making progress towards your end of the year goal? How is the balance going between being a business owner and a person in this world? And that's where this 4-step process comes into play. So this is the 4R strategy to adjusting your plans next year. The first thing that you are going to do is review. Now, in the review stage, you are really thinking about what has happened. How did that feel? What are some things that immediately come to your mind that you need to change or adjust? It's really that like sit down, journal, think about the last 90 days or think about what's coming up for you and really review a specific period of time. Again, you really want to pay attention to these key areas. Business, obviously, revenue, sales, how is it feeling overall? Personal life, what's happening in your personal life? Have things changed? How is the overall balance going between the two? And this review is going to look different for everyone. But inside Brand New Plan, I'm going to give you very specific questions to ask yourself and review every 90 days so that, again, you can repeat this strategy and make sure you're on track. Because when you're thinking about your next year in business, I want you to think about, the person that you want to be at the end of the year, the type of business owner that you want to be, that identity that you're shifting into. And that's what we're really focused on. So every 90 days, you're able to say, am I heading in the right direction? Do things still feel good for me? Do I still enjoy showing up in my business? This frequent review, this frequent check-in is so crucial in terms of consistency as a business owner. The second thing you're going to do is reflect. Okay, so while the review might be more analytical, if you will, looking at, how is the scheduling going, looking at the balance, looking at the data, just looking at the things that are ultimately happening. The reflect is more focused on the feeling and the emotional. What isn't working and why isn't it working? What is working and why is it working? How am I feeling overall about my business and where I'm showing up and how I am talking to my clients and how I am selling? How am I feeling overall in terms of these priorities that I've set for myself for the quarter? Something else that we're teaching inside a Brand New Plan is setting these 3 goals or priorities for each quarter that, of course, lead to the big end of the year goal that you have for yourself and your business. So how are you feeling about those pieces? I talk a lot about emotional branding, and emotional branding is a key in marketing. I also talk a lot about storytelling and the importance of storytelling and the personal reflection and the personal stories that you want to share in order to improve your marketing. So it should come as no freaking surprise to you that I say that when it comes to planning, you've got to check in with yourself. You've got to check in with how you're feeling overall. Because the quickest way to burn out as an entrepreneur, and something that we're seeing a lot online with very, very predominant entrepreneurs, is not checking in with yourself. Like, how does this actually make me feel? Am I just reaching for a specific number? Am I reaching for a specific outcome, but I don't have an emotional attachment to that? This is the work that you really want to do at the reflex stage. And again, these first 2 are really like journaling. Sit down, record yourself, write in your journal, answer some questions. Again, inside Brand New Plan, I'm giving very specific questions to ask yourself at this stage. But the overall idea, if you choose to do this on your own, is to really reflect on how you are feeling and why you believe these certain things are working or not working in your business. It's also a fantastic time to check in and see, is something brewing in the background? Have you been thinking about something new that you want to create or launch or a new direction, and diving a little bit deeper into that to see, does it work for the next 90 days? Or is that something we're going to revisit again, maybe in Q3? The third R of the strategy is to regroup. All right, we've done a lot of deep diving. We've done a lot of let's look at the data, let's look at the analytics, let's see what's working and not working. Let's look at why that's happening and how I'm ultimately feeling. And now you want to regroup. So you really want to pull back and be able to look at it all and say, what does this mean? What does this tell me about what I want to focus on in the next 90 days? What does this tell me about my end of the year goal? Because if we're being honest, sometimes the end of your year goal might change, and that's totally okay. It's going to become less of a shock if you're actually checking in with yourself and your alignment every 90 days, as I'm suggesting here. Because then you can kind of preemptively see these changes happening and address them in a proactive way rather than pivoting in a reactive way. And that, again, is when we start to just throw spaghetti at the wall or make rash decisions or do things without actually kind of thinking about the strategy behind that. So when you're regrouping, you're looking at what your plan ultimately was. You're thinking about the next 90 days. What does this information tell me about my 3 focuses? You're thinking about your end of the year goal. Am I still on track? Is this still ultimately what I want? And number 4 is refresh or revise. Now that you have all this information, it's time to get a little strategic with it. What adjustments do you need to make? Is this a simple refresh? Let me just breathe some fresh life into my strategy. Let me try something new. I know it's not working anymore. Let me release that. Let me refresh kind of my next 90-day game plan and my 3 big goals. Or is this a complete revision? Is my end of the year goal no longer feeling aligned? Life happens, things happen. Maybe what you thought you wanted in December of 2023 is no longer what you want come April of the next year. So you need to determine, is this a simple refresh? Some little shifts that I need to make? Is everything going according to plan? I feel really, really good. Just want to pop in these things to really elevate how I feel about my business and that balance I'm creating between my business and my personal life. Or do I need a full revision? And if you need a full revision, that is when you want to look at the end of the year goal and make those updates first. Because again, you want to reverse engineer. So what does the end of the year goal that I have for myself and my business? And ultimately, what steps do I need to take to get there? And then that will introduce the 3 main things that you want to prioritize for the upcoming 90 days. And again, you're repeating this every 90 days. So every 90 days, you're repeating this exact same 4-part process. Because pivoting is not failure, right? Pivoting is acting more in alignment. It's saying, these things don't feel great. I'm super aware of that. I'm not going to ignore them. I'm going to take note of them. I'm going to take a proactive approach. I'm going to implement the strategy that I know so I don't get super overwhelmed with what I need to do. And I'm going to be able to take action. There's this beautiful balance when it comes to strategy. Sometimes people think that strategy is just like a freaking checklist. But you are the CEO of your own life as well as the CEO of your business. You get to determine what is in that checklist. And the only way that you can determine what you need to do, the steps you need to take, is to really ask yourself, what do I want? And when you can reflect and check in with yourself on these different things, minimum every 90 days, you're going to have a more aligned year. Things are going to flow and be more in ease. It's going to feel less like a struggle because everything is coming from a really inspiring spot. You're not just doing what you think you should be doing. You're taking these steps that feel like they are what you should be doing. They feel right to you. They feel inspiring to you. And as you can probably imagine, it makes showing up and building a business that much easier. This is why I love aligned action. This is why I talk about it all of the time. This is one of the reasons I'm obsessed with branding, because at the branding level, you're creating that alignment and then you can take the action via your marketing. I love it all. And like I said, inside a brand new plan, I'm going to teach you how to create a more aligned plan for your business next year, walking you through the step-by-step process of choosing your end of the year goal, reverse engineering, really thinking about not just a number that you want to hit, but who you want to be as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, the priorities that you personally have that are in alignment with your values, and skipping the whole 12-month rigid plan and instead focusing on a strategy every 90 days with this pivoting check-in. Checking in with yourself, making sure things still feel good, because you can have a feel-good business. I really, really believe that. And this is really the first step. It comes down to the planning, it comes down to the systems. So as you approach your next year in business, I want you to head to your calendar and I want you to write down Michelle's 4-part strategy, okay? Every 90 days, so that you remember to revisit these 4 steps that I shared with you. And again, if you want more information, you want the very specific questions to ask yourself at each of these stages, Join us inside of Brand New Plan. You can sign up today at brandmerry.com/new plan. In the next episode, I'm going to walk you through planning the next year in your business and what are the specific phases that you want to make sure that you are hitting. Hint, this is definitely one of them, but we're going to talk big picture. So I'll be back with another episode all about planning, our topic of November, and I hope that you'll join me. If this episode spoke to you or if you have any follow-up questions, be sure to send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Knight Co. And if you're watching this video on YouTube, I'd love to know in the comments your thoughts and your key takeaways. I'll be back with another episode. Have an amazing week.